it's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of a week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Tatum has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class of the Heisman with those two games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those two games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. I mean, what is he, a 6-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on Sports.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid, our midweek edition of the show. Halloween coming up tomorrow. Scary place last night in baseball for the New York Yankees, who staved off elimination. And we get another baseball game today, so we'll discuss that. We'll have a preview of it as well. In addition, of course, we have guest contributors today from Sporting News as we talk a little National Football League and also get ready for the upcoming weekend in college football as well. And our resident expert on TV and streaming, Simon Applebaum from the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised, joins us each and every Wednesday. He'll be with us in about 40 minutes from now as well. So plenty to get to here on the show, including a preview of the big game between Texas A&M, South Carolina this week. Really good week ahead of college football as well. Let's begin with our show today and talk a little bit about what happened last night in the Bronx, where the Los Angeles Dodgers were helped out quite a bit by Freddie Freeman, who homered yet again to start off this game yesterday. But it was pretty much all Yankees from there. Late game heroics from Anthony Volpe and company as the Yankees finally get an offensive performance that we've been waiting for all postseason. 11-4, the final yesterday. Anthony Volpe ends up hitting a grand slam in this one. So down 0-3, the Yankees do come back and they do capture a victory, although some controversy was had with a fan taking the ball out of Mookie Betts' glove in that game, which we'll get to a little bit later. Needless to say, the focus now for the Yankees is one game at a time, although after the game yesterday, Volpe said he didn't remember a thing as soon as he hit that ball out.
No, I think I pretty much blacked out as soon as I saw it go over the fence, but no, we just want to keep putting pressure on him, and I think everyone had confidence in everyone in the lineup that someone was going to get the big hit, and we've been having such good at-bats and putting such good swings on the ball that, I mean, we just felt like it was only a matter of time. No, I mean, we were just prepared. They did a bullpen game, and it's kind of tough to prepare for, and their guys have really good stuff, but we just had so much confidence in everyone going in that we just couldn't wait to play. No, I mean, we're just going to play our game. We feel like if we do that and we play the way we know we're capable of playing, they're obviously a good team and they can do what they do and whatever they want to do. But like I said, we just have so much confidence in us that if we play that way, we feel like we'll win.
Meanwhile, on the side of the Dodgers, Dave Roberts down a couple of runs, had a choice. Push down the envelope a little bit, see if you could win, or use some players that, essentially that they haven't used all that much. And that included the guy who gave up the Grand Slam yesterday and Brent Honeywell. But after the game, Robert said he knew that the Yankees were not just going to completely lay down, and he found that out the hard way yesterday.
I don't think anyone expected those guys to lay down. And we had some at-bats that I thought could have been better. But we knew it was a bullpen game. And as far as outcomes, to have, 6 guys in your pen that are feeling good, rested, I feel good about that. And being up 3-1. Yeah, I feel great. It's about, the guys that you have available. Some of those guys they're all rested. So we have guys that can do up, down. So where we're at with tomorrow, knowing there's an off day behind that, we're in a great spot with leverage relievers. No. I mean, I think that they beat us. Volpe took a good swing. They took advantage of a couple free passes. They tacked on later. I do think that at bat wise, I think we could have done some things to get in their pen a little bit earlier. But again, at the end of the day, we're still in a pretty good spot, and we feel good. We'll be ready to go tomorrow.
And the Yankees tonight will have Garrett Cole on the mound to see if they can extend the series even further, although Jack Flaherty's done a nice job for the Dodgers. Yankees, smaller favorite tonight than they were last night, minus 136 on the money line. Total is 8, and the game begins at 8:08 Eastern. Meanwhile, a change at quarterback from the Indianapolis Colts. They draft Anthony Richardson a couple of seasons ago. Looks really good at the start of last season. Gets hurt. Did not look good this season. And so the ageless wonder Joe Flacco is back at center for the Colts. He will start this week. Not sure how long this will go for, but as the Colts push toward a potential playoff spot, Flacco will see if he can repeat the magic with the Colts that he had with the Browns last year. No magic in the cards for the Houston Texans wide receiver Stephon Diggs. They're without Nico Collins, and they'll be without Diggs for the remainder of the season. A torn ACL. They signed him in the offseason, made a trade with the Buffalo Bills to acquire him, which led some doubt on the side, by the way, of the Buffalo Bills at the time. They've been just fine. Diggs, all-pro wide receiver, going to miss the remainder of the season, and it is a big hit for the Texans, who now are without their 2 top targets for C.J. Stroud, said D'Amico Ryans.
Really hurts our team to hear that news, and he's been such an important part to our team, and just everything that he brought, not only on the field but off the field, the energy, the leader, like the way he worked every single day. He brought a lot to our team, and we have to pick up the slack. A lot of guys have to step up, pick up the slack, but definitely praying for him to have a speedy, successful recovery. It's definitely a blow to us. Yeah, speaking to him, it's like anyone would be. It's tough, and tough news to hear, especially with how much he pours into it. Right, that's one guy who gave his all to everything that we ever asked him to do, and he's hurting, of course, and we're hurting for him as well.
The NFL trade deadline coming up next week. We'll see if Houston adds a wide receiver. Meanwhile, the NBA's investigation into the health status of Joel Embiid has come to a close. He had been fined $100,000 for public statements around the health status of Embiid. The investigation showed that the Sixers did not violate player participation policy with Embiid's missed game, but did so with the public comments that did not reflect his health properly with his knee. The Chicago White Sox can't make it official until the World Series are over, but it looks like they have their new skipper. Former outfielder Will Venable, who is the Texas Rangers associate manager, is going to be the next manager of the Chicago White Sox. ESPN reports this last night. As soon as the World Series is over, I'm sure they'll make this official. Prosecutors are right now reviewing a warrant request for Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams, who's already suspended because of PEDs. The office is reviewing a request on a concealed weapons charge. In a statement released Tuesday, the Detroit Police Department says the investigation is ongoing. Williams, of course, was suspended for sports betting, now suspended for PEDs, but naturally, to say the least, Williams supposed to be on the field starting next week. Trade in the NFL. Deontay Johnson signed a 1-year deal with the Carolina Panthers. He's been traded to the Baltimore Ravens. He joins a very talented squad with Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. Deontay Johnson, now a member of the Ravens. Also, the Vikings acquired left tackle Cam Robinson after their left tackle Christian Darrisaw tore his ACL, and he's going to be out for the season. Quarterback change in Michigan. We've seen several of them this year. One of them was starting Jack Tuttle and then benching Jack Tuttle. Well, after 7 years in college football, Tuttle has decided after having a concussion a couple of weeks ago that he is going to retire from college football. Last night in college football, meanwhile, Louisiana beat Texas State 23-17 on the road. Liberty tonight takes on Jacksonville State. They're 2.5-point favorites. And Kennesaw State, 24.5-point underdogs against Western Kentucky. Unfortunately, the injury saga for Alonzo Ball continues. He's back, and now he's gone. Chicago Bulls guard sprained his right wrist in the first quarter of Monday night's game. Will be reevaluated in 10 days. The Denver Nuggets beat the Nets 144-139 in overtime last night. Nikola Jokic, 29 points, 18 rebounds, 16 assists. The Mavs beat the Wolves 120-114. Kyrie Irving had 35 points in that one. And the Warriors, without Steph Curry, beat the Pelicans 124-106. Tonight in the NBA, LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers are back in Cleveland. The Lakers are 4.5-point underdogs against the Cavs. The champs, the Boston Celtics, are in Indiana, where they're 6.5-point favorites over the Pacers, and the Knicks and Heat go at it tonight, a pick'em line. And out west, the Clippers are 8.5-point favorites against the Portland Trailblazers. Coming up next, after the break, it was supposed to be the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Jets fighting it out for the AFC East. As of right now, it appears the Bills are fighting amongst themselves for that division. But can the Dolphins upset the Bills in Buffalo this week? We'll find out next. Matt Lutovsky joins us.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes.
Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class at the Heisman with those 2 games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those 2 games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. You know, I mean, what is he, a 6th-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players hit home run. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got, 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Really tough games to call, I think, in the NFL this week. A lot of short lines. You look at it, and it's like you want to click in your office, pull one team. You think maybe it's the other team. Matt, it kind of has that feel this week, right? Like, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of clear-cut games. There's a few favorites of 5-6 points or more. But after what we saw last week, we could be in for some upsets, I think, again this week.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I think there's a lot of teams that even at this point in the season, we still don't have a full read on, whether it's been because there's injuries or because maybe one part of the team hasn't played well, but now looks to be playing better. So there's still plenty to learn about the NFL at this point. That's the thing about the relatively small sample sizes. You never totally feel comfortable. And as we hit trade season here and more deals start happening, it'll sort of reset itself a little bit, at least for a few teams.
Yeah, it will. And again, some of the lines sort of look strange. Thursday Night Football, Jets favored over Houston. I know a lot of people have been talking about that. How is that possible? I think they don't understand that this is how hotels are built in Las Vegas. Another one could be the Buffalo Bills against the Miami Dolphins. Like, Matt, the Dolphins have, shown nothing without Tua. Last week, they lost to Arizona at home. But yet, Bills only 6.5-point favorites over the Dolphins this week. And by the way, we have seen, even in the Bills' best and the Dolphins' worst, the Dolphins play very well against Buffalo. They don't win, but they play well. Is this too many points to lay this week for Buffalo and Miami? I mean, Buffalo's coming off an incredible performance against Seattle.
Yeah, this one feels like it's going to be close. And the interesting thing with Miami, obviously they're a different team with Tua. We know that. The defense, it never feels like it can get stops when it needs it. But when you look at the stats overall, it's statistically pretty solid. So what does that mean? I'm still trying to figure that out. This is one of those things we sort of just alluded to. What exactly is this team? We know what Buffalo is. They're a very good all-around team. They have some defensive struggles, particularly against the run, which Miami can do very well. But they run the ball well. Josh Allen is Josh Allen. He's just an all-around. He makes the plays. And the biggest thing for them is he's not turning the ball over this year. And I think that'll continue. I think this will be another close game, but I do think Buffalo will pull it out. It's going to be a bit of a heartbreaker for Miami, unfortunately, kind of like last week was. They're certainly excited to have Tua back. They played better, but they ultimately couldn't close the deal. That's how I envision this game going as well.
Yeah, me too. I do think a lot of points here for a Miami team that can score. They just had a hard time on defense. Meanwhile, their win total is 6.5. Really hard to see a path for me, Matt, just given the nature of some of the teams in the AFC that have climbed above them to make the playoffs. They're plus 230. They haven't won the AFC since, I don't even know, 1985 or something like that. So I'm not going to take that and then to win the Super Bowl, no chance. Is there any path for them to make the playoffs at this point? They have remaining games against the Jets, and I'm guessing the Patriots. I haven't looked that up, but I think, yeah, and definitely against the Patriots. So maybe there's a couple of wins there. Does 9-8 get you in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, it'll be tough, and you're right. You really have to go sort of game by game looking at their schedule to get a better feel of how many wins they'll finish with. But right now, they've just banked too many losses as far as I'm concerned. And they have the type of offense, they have the type of team that can put points up in a hurry and get some wins. But overall, I just don't think they're a reliable team. And the sad thing with Tua is you never know when he's going to get hurt again. It might not be his head. It might be something else. He's always been a bit of a fragile guy. It's just the facts. So he's a good player. He's a tough player, but he gets injured a lot. And that's not even getting into some of the other players who tend to get injured, like their running backs. So this is a tough team, I think, to bet on.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on to a tough one to call. Another one, I think, Bears and Cardinals this week. The Cardinals, had they lost to Miami, would probably not be favored this week, but they are at home. The Bears are on the road, 44.5. A lot of criticism for the Bears going into this week with their coaching and just some of the play calling. And I think that's kind of understandable at this point. Talent-wise, feels like these two teams are the same, but the odds are telling us they're like almost dead even, with the Cardinals being a 1.5 favorite. Total 44.5. Any opinion on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Bears. Now, look, I say that with a grain of salt. I think I've gotten the Cardinals wrong in my pick'em league virtually every single week this year. So I have a real tough time with the Cardinals. I don't know, maybe I'm bitter right now and just want to pick against them. But I think you're right about the Cardinals won last week. The game really turned on a safety that at the time didn't look like it was going to matter. And that wound up being the difference in margin. And then obviously we know what happened to the Bears. It was an ugly game, and in a way they didn't deserve to win, but in another way, NFL teams win that game 999 times out of 1,000. And so if you flip that, how different is this line? I think the Bears are unquestionably the better team. They have the better defense. And I think, regardless of where this game is, I think they're gonna bounce back and come away with the win. I think the biggest, question with the Bears might be their coaching. Caleb Williams still a little inconsistent, but I just think they're an all-around better team, certainly a better defense.
Yeah, I kind of see it the same way as you there. All right, so I guess the Colts, Matt, are looking at this. I don't think they're dumping on Anthony Richardson for the future. I think that they look and they're like, wait, halfway through the season, who's even good in the AFC besides Kansas City? Baltimore's lost some games. Pittsburgh doesn't look great. Maybe we have a shot, right? Like, I think that's the way they look at it, which is why they did it. I think a play for this year. But, Matt, I got to tell you, like, the Flacco magic is going to run out at some point. They're playing them this week at Minnesota. I mean, this is a horrible environment for him to have to go to and win. Vikings are 5.5-point favorites. The line opened up bigger. It's now down because Flacco's starting. I mean, I guess, Matt, right? Like, I guess that maybe Flacco could lead some more magic again, but I'm not going to bank on that.
Yeah, I'm not either. Look, they've been a better team with him at quarterback. There's no question. They got Jonathan Taylor back, too. And the Vikings have certainly shown some cracks. Darisaw being hurt is huge. Now, we'll see how the newcomer does. But I do think the Vikings at home, they're the better team. And it's tough to count on Joe Flacco week after week. And it's really tough to count on that defense week after week. And I think the Vikings defense is good enough. They'll give them problems. And they'll come away with a win. They'll get back on track. There's certainly going to be a great crowd for that game. So I am looking forward to it. But I certainly like the Vikings.
All right. Good call. Matt, thanks again for coming on the show. Have a great rest of your week.
You too.
A preview of A&M and South Carolina up next.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes.
Now you're going to take on the road one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class at the Heisman with those 2 games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those 2 games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. What is he, a 6th-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players hit home run. I call it covering the board. If I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Big games coming up this weekend. One of the bigger ones involves at least one team that has aspirations of getting in the college football playoff. It's A&M and South Carolina. We preview that and more on this edition of the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, well, don't look now, but Texas A&M is in this thing, folks. It didn't look like that early on in the season, but they're going to fight this out with a chance to get into the college football playoff. Huge game this week between SC and A&M. Here's a preview from their head coach, Mike Elko.
And now we kind of turn our attention ahead to an extremely big challenge. I think this will be the biggest challenge of the year to date. This is going to be an extremely talented team, 4-3, coming off of a bye week. Certainly could be 6-7-1 easily, or 6-1, easily. I just think they're a team that has grown every week. They're playing a lot of really talented young guys mixed in with a blend of talented veterans, and this is going to be an enormous challenge for our program. I mean, we're still just looking for some consistency in the throw game, and it's just. It feels like we're still working through a lot of the timing elements of it. And that sounds like coach speak, but it's the reality. We're not in a really good timing rhythm of the quarterback going through his progressions in the right timing, the wideouts being in the right windows in the right timing, and then when all of those things are happening, then sometimes the O-line's failing, and that happened more Saturday night than it has in previous weeks. But then all of a sudden, okay, we've got it, and the quarterback's about to throw it, and then we get sacked. And so I just think we have to get our passing game working in a rhythm that it can be more productive and more efficient for us if we want to go down the road the way we want to.
Meanwhile, South Carolina in a position to potentially upset A&M, maybe get themselves in the playoff picture. Shane Beamer knows that it's all about this week for their team, and curiously, all about the stats that pile up in the Southeastern Conference. Have a listen.
I know you guys err more on the side of looking at the NCAA stats of everything and where people rank on all 100-plus teams. I look at the SEC stats because that's what we're judged on. And this is the greatest conference in the world, and there's no conference in America that has more competitive Saturdays with NFL players on the field than this league. So I look at what teams do in SEC games. So if you look at SEC versus SEC teams stats, number one in the SEC in rushing offense, Texas A&M. In SEC games, number one in rushing defense, Texas A&M. Number one scoring offense, Texas A&M. Number one in turnover margin, Texas A&M. Rushing attempts, Texas A&M. I think red zone, they're number one in the SEC in touchdowns, in red zone percentage. I think 16 touchdowns and 20 trips. So you look at everything, SEC versus SEC games, which they've played 5 of them just like we have, and they are near the top in every category that directly equates to winning and losing. Turnover margin right there. They've only given the ball up 3 times in 5 SEC games. So they're doing the things that you have to do to win football games. Credit to the coaching staff and the players for the way they're performing. We have a big challenge, but optimistic about the opportunity that we have. We should be at our best on Saturday as well.
All right, so there is the setup. The bottom line is A&M 2.5-point favorites this week on the road at South Carolina. Let's get a preview against the spread in this game from one of our hosts here on SportsGrid from College Football Today, Joe Lisi.
Huge SEC battle taking place this Saturday night under the lights in Williams-Brice Stadium. Top-ranked Texas A&M travels to Columbia to take on the Gamecocks. Right now, Texas A&M opens as a 2.5-point road favorite. This is not going to be an easy game. They're facing a well-rested South Carolina team that's coming off a dominating road win over the Oklahoma Sooners 35-9. This is a South Carolina defense that's only giving up 101 rushing yards per game, and more importantly, only 18 points per game heading into this matchup. On the flip side, you have Marcel Reed that came off the bench in the second half to lead the Aggies from a come-from-behind 17-7 second-half deficit. They win it by 12 over LSU. Reed rushed for 62 yards on the ground and 3 big touchdowns. Early on, the line does favor Texas A&M, but I'm taking the points with South Carolina. Now, Craig, back to you.
All right, thanks very much, Joe. We'll catch Joe on Saturday morning. Guess who you'll catch up next? Mark Zinno is up next to discuss all of the action in Major League Baseball, a little NFL as well. We break it all down. Zinno covers it all for us here at SportsGrid. We've got him up next. Don't go away.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes.
Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class at the Heisman with those 2 games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those 2 games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. I mean, what is he, a 6th-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players hit home run. I call it covering the board. If I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Sportsnet Canada reporting Connor McDavid, all-world star. The Edmonton Oilers going to be out 2 weeks with his injury. Been waiting on that news. I know we don't talk a ton of NHL here on the show. Best player in hockey. Figured we'd mention that before we get to Mark Zinno, who's getting ready to cover it all for us. I don't think we're going to do pickleball here, but we will do some football. We'll do some baseball. I don't know what else I'll leave out. But Zinno, it is great to see you again, and thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We get a small reprieve from the Yankees getting eliminated and losing the World Series for at least one night. And if Aaron Boone wasn't such a putz in Game 1, we'd have a 2-2 series right now and something to be excited about.
Yeah, it's a really, I think, compelling note that you mentioned there, because I'm with you. I do think inevitably Dodgers are going to win, but you're right. It could have, went the other way with Freddie Freeman hitting that monstrous home run or grand slam that changed it all. But we saw another grand slam last night. Did it feel to you watching the game, and I've mentioned this a couple of times now, that when Honeywell came in and he started getting hit a little bit, like the Dodgers would never admit like they laid down, but it sort of felt like they didn't like put their foot on the throat once they were down 2 runs late.
Listen, when you got to the 7th inning, right, 6th, 7th inning, and it didn't look like the Dodgers had much life in their bats anymore. Obviously, Dave Roberts wasn't going to go with his high leverage arms. He knows he's got 3 games left to win this thing. He also knows that he has a Game 5 and then a day off to rest everybody. So save all the high leverage arms for Game 5 if the game is close. And yeah, I mean, those were high leverage arms last night, those clowns. Hey, next time you want to catch a foul ball, dude, just do it above his glove and not try to rip it out. But anyway, so beyond all that, Dave Roberts was smart to play it the way he did. If his bats got him back in it, great. But he wasn't about to waste any high leverage arms in a game that he didn't 100% need to win. I think the one thing is true about the Yankees. Once that ball went over the fence and the Yankees grabbed this thing called, what's that word? Oh, yeah, the lead. Something they haven't had since Game 1. Like everybody relaxed a little bit. It felt like everybody got a lot more loose. In fact, I was on In-Game Live with Dave Sherpen and Scott Wetzel last night. And as soon as that ball went over the fence for the Grand Slam, I asked him, what's the in-game over? And I said, bet it, because it was 12.5. I'm like, this is exactly what's going to happen. The Dodgers will take their foot off the gas pedal. They'll throw in some arms that they don't really care about, and everybody in the Yankees will start to relax and score runs. Now the question is, can you duplicate it 2 nights in a row? And that really boils down to how quickly the Yankees can get to Jack Flaherty.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, tonight with Garrett Cole, despite who's on the other side, the Yankees are less of a favorite tonight than they were. I understand Flaherty's better than what the Dodgers started yesterday. I get that. But still, It is worth noting that the line is thinner than it was the night before. 136 total of 8. Do you think – I mean, you obviously are thinking the Dodgers win either tonight or Friday, I would guess, because then if it would get to Game 7, we'd have to have a different conversation. But is tonight the night, you think, or do you think it goes 6?
No, I actually, for the first time, feel comfortable about the Yankees in this series winning a baseball game. Look, there's two things here with that line. One, Cole is not as good at home as he has been on the road this year. Just look at the numbers. I mean, the numbers on the road have been substantially better for him. And you go back to game one, there were about 2, if not 3 fly balls that were outs in Dodger Stadium that easily would have been home runs in Yankee Stadium. Much like Freddie Freeman's home run last night that barely made it over the 315 sign, 314 sign in right field. It went 315 feet. So, but you expect Cole to show up and be a gamer, right? This is why you paid him $245 million. This is exactly what he's here for. So forget the environment and just assume that Cole's going to be better. But Jack Flaherty, on the other hand, Craig, has been a mixed bag of everything since coming to the Dodgers. He's had 2 starts back-to-back this year where he's given up less than 3 runs. And one of those starts, he didn't even get a quality start, and he only lasted 5 1/3. And you look at the postseason. It was bad. It was good. It was bad. It was good. Time for bad again, especially the second time around. Now, it's interesting because Flaherty faced the Padres the last time in the regular season, and then he was worse when he faced him in the first round of the playoffs. Shut out the Mets the first time, then gave up 8 runs a second time. Was good against the Yankees the first time. I expect another round with the Yankees hitters against Flaherty. They should get to him early. I actually like Flaherty under 14.5 outs tonight because if he gives up a runner too early, the next time he gets in trouble, Roberts will have no issues going to a high leverage arm early to keep this thing close, knowing he has an off day tomorrow, that nobody has to pitch tomorrow. So he can afford to put high leverage arms in early in the game, knowing they're going to get a day off on Friday before they play game 6 on Saturday. So, yeah, I think Flaherty stays under 14.5 outs. I think the Yankees are ahead after 5 innings, and I'll keep my fingers crossed they close the thing out and win tonight.
Yeah, we'll see. Should be a fun game tonight at the very least. And, I'll root. I would root for as much baseball as we can get. I mean, we're down to the end here, but I am with you. I do think inevitably Dodgers win. Okay, so what's the message here for football? We're going to go to football now. What's the message here for the Indianapolis Colts? Richardson, last year plays amazing initially for Indianapolis. Then this year he's gone the other way. I see it where, Mark, that the Colts look at the AFC and kind of are looking at this like, hey, it is worth it to make a change if we can get to 9-8 or 10-7 and get in the playoffs. I saw Anthony Richardson. I went to UF, Morgan. I saw him play there for years. I was shocked that he got drafted that high. I was shocked that he was a starter. And then I thought, okay, I'm wrong. He's great. But now I'm feeling like, okay, I may have been right and changed my opinion of this. Is Richardson a bust, or is there still time here?
I mean, he's not a bust yet, but he's always been a project. And I don't think he's ever been great. I think that's aggressive. I think he had a couple of good games before he blew out his knee last year. And I think he had a halfway decent game in the opener this year. But objectively, if you've watched the Colts this year at all, Flacco gives them a much better chance to win. And he's a much better quarterback. The offense is much better with him. I mean, Anthony Richardson struggled to complete passes against the Bears defense that isn't very good. So, yeah, I am totally okay with the Colts making that. I think secretly Shane Steichen is like, thank you, Anthony Richardson. Thank you for doing this. We are a much better offense and have a much better chance to win with Joe Flacco under center. And that's something to say about a 37, 38-year-old quarterback. But Flacco clearly is in much more command of the offense, and everybody is better for it. And Jonathan Taylor is going to be better for it because guess what? You can't stack 8 in the box against Flacco because they'll tear you to shreds.
All right, so what are the Texans going to do? Because, Deontay Johnson was the low-lying fruit name in terms of trade, and he didn't go to Houston. They're without Nico Collins. He'll be back. They're without Stephon Diggs. Houston was good without Stephon Diggs last year, too. It was just Tank Dell and Nico. But at this point, does it feel like Houston has to make some sort of move to add a receiver here? I'm not familiar with who, their 4th and 5th guy is.
I don't necessarily know that. I mean, look, really everything boils down to C.J. Stroud. At this point, we can feel pretty confident that C.J. Stroud is the kind of quarterback who can elevate anybody who's on the roster into being a decent player. I don't want to get too aggressive with that stance, but we have a large enough sample size that C.J. Stroud last year took a Texans team that nobody thought was going to be any good and led him to a division title, all because he can play. So I don't know that they have to make a move. If they can find one there that works, I wouldn't be against it, And I tell you honestly, if I was like the New York Giants, I'd call them up and be like, what do you want for Steve Slayton? Give us a 3rd-round pick. What do you want for Wan'Dale Robinson? We'll give you a 4th-round pick. Move one of those guys, because the Giants season is done. Get rid of one of those guys and get a draft pick back from Houston. Granted, it's not going to be, anything of major note, but Why not stock draft capital? Like Steve Slayton feels like a target that the Texans could go get, and a guy that is a good possession receiver that would work well in that offense in Houston.
All right. Let's review a quick game here in the NFL. The Ravens do get Deontay Johnson. They open up as 9.5-point favorites over the Denver Broncos. Zin, this is a heck of a point swing where you go from being 11-point favorites one week to 9.5-point dogs the next. That's rare, right, in the NFL?
Yeah, but again, 1 week was against the Panthers, so that doesn't count because they're barely an NFL team. But I don't know how you can't take the Broncos here. Look, the Ravens, their formula is to get an early lead, play with a big lead, and run away with it. When they don't do that, they find themselves in very close games, and more often than not, games that they lose. This is a Denver defense that travels and travels well. They're going to take away what the Ravens do well, and they're going to put it on Lamar Jackson to win this thing. Unless Lamar Jackson rushes for 150 yards in this game, I think Denver keeps it close.
All right, Mark. Great stuff, as always. Out of time, but we'll do it another time. Thanks for coming on.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Simon Applebaum will join us next from the podcast tomorrow. Will be televised.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes.
Now you're going to take on the road, one of the best rush defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class at the Heisman with those 2 games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those 2 games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. What is he, a 6th-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. If I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got, 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got Simon Applebaum with us from the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised. And we've had the sports equinox happen over the last week or so with all sports going on at the same time. So who's winning in the ratings? As they say, let's bring in Simon for the latest on that. Simon, the World Series going on. You got New York, you got L.A., and, battling against the NBA regular season, battling against Monday Night Football. And for the first time in a long time, Simon, baseball is winning that battle.
It is, Craig, and great to be with you. In fact, going to the first 3 games, Fox, which is carrying the games, first game won 14.2 million viewers. That's just Fox alone. Second game, 13.4, now 13.1 for game 3. And by the way, these are numbers just for Fox. When Fox gives out the numbers, they also include about 400,000, 500,000 for Fox Deportes in Spanish and some of the digital platforms. What's really interesting, you mentioned in the last segment that you want as much baseball as possible. Not just you, Fox. if this series goes past tonight and it goes back to Los Angeles for Game 6 and 7, Fox could make as much as $110 million in ad sales. You know, when you have an NBA Finals, you have a World Series which goes 7 games. The more games you get, the more advertising you sell. So Fox is looking for, hey, I think they're rooting behind the scenes for the Yankees to win tonight and to get that $100 million more in ad sales. By the way, if the Dodgers do win tonight, win it all, I think Freddie Freeman is going to be the MVP. He has had like the monster hits in all the games so far, and he certainly deserves it. If the Yankees continue and they ultimately win, who knows? It might be Anthony Volpe who had the big hit last night. So we'll see what goes on. But I'll tell you, Fox is very, very much hoping that they can get a full World Series. By the way, each of these games is up 60% or more in viewership from last year, and they are the best Game 1, Game 2, Game 3 since 2017, 2018. So right now, Fox is on a great roll.
Yep, the 2 big markets, a lot of people watching on the West Coast and East Coast as well. All right, let's catch people up on this latest dispute, Simon, and I think we probably need some backstory here because not everybody's watching us, you and I, talk about this every week, but this streaming service that they're trying to put together, Disney, Fox, Warner Brothers, venue being blocked by a company called Fubo. Let's give a 30-second backstory on this and get an update as to where things stand.
Okay, Fubo is currently the multi-sports channel bundle. Venue wants to break into their territory by having all of the Fox services, the Warner Bros. Discovery services, and the Disney services dealing with sports as their own mega sports channel bundle. Fubo has filed an antitrust suit against Venue. They've also gotten a preliminary injunction. Venue was hoping to get on the air by this time 2 months ago. Fubo got a court ruling for a temporary injunction preventing them from going on. Fubo has set an antitrust date for their lawsuit, October 6th of next year. Now, here's the interesting thing. We told you last week that there were reports of a amicus brief that Fubo wanted to get from a U.S. court judge that would make the injunction permanent. We now know that at least attorney generals in 6 states, including your state where you are, Florida, right now, Craig, they have filed friend of the court or amicus briefs basically saying, don't keep the injunction. Take it off. Why? In their view, they think this is a bad antitrust case. In their minds, antitrust is all about protecting consumers from harm. But they think in this case, it's protecting Fubo from harm by having a rival mega sports channel bundle. So that's where we stand. We told you last week that Venue is hoping to get on the air by March Madness of next year. That's March, early April. I would suggest that if they can't get the temporary injunction lifted by the end of this year, January at the latest, Venue might just say, you know what, it's not worth it. We're losing money out of this. Let's just call it quits.
That would be fascinating to see all that time put into that and money as well. Okay, so NFL makes an announcement, which I think may catch some people by surprise, that essentially The Simpsons are going to be featured in an animated game, alternate broadcast in the month of December. Tell us more about this, Simon, how it's going to work, because I don't think there's any confusion with the popularity of The Simpsons over the last 30 years, but certainly how they turned a football game into a Simpsons theme.
Well, Craig, it was about a year ago that Disney decided, let's do an animated game, a Sunday morning game. It was the Toy Story Fun Day football game. Did very, very well, won 3 Emmy Awards. And the idea is that they would do real-time animation and make this a family-friendly show. They used NFL Next Gen stats and 2 technical developments from Sony to make the animation happen in real time. And then have characters from Toy Story interact with the action. I mentioned won several Sports Emmy Awards earlier this year, and now ESPN has decided we're going to do a second Fun Day football game. This time feature The Simpsons. It's going to be on Monday, December 9th. It's going to be part of Monday Night Football. It's going to be carried live on both ESPN Plus and Disney Plus. And the idea is, same technology is going to be used, but now they're going to have The Simpsons characters be involved on the by the way, the game is the Cowboys and the Bengals. Homer is going to be rooting for the Cowboys on the sidelines. Bart is going to root for the Bengals. They're going to have the Simpsons producer actually be involved in making pre-recorded segments. Drew Carter is going to be doing the play-by-play for ESPN. Darren Orlovsky and Mina Kimes will be in the commentary, and it should be a lot of fun. And we understand also there will be animated characters of Stephen A. Smith and a few other ESPN personalities as part of this. So we'll see if second time is as good as the first. Again, that's Monday, December 9th. It'll be carried live on ESPN Plus and Disney Plus. And by the way, ESPN Plus will also have the Peyton Eli game, the alternative telecast, as well as the regular telecast if you want to see Joe Buck and Troy Aikman.
All right, so 8 different ways to watch. I'm just kidding. 3 at least to watch Monday Night Football in December. All right, let's close it out. Another athlete joining in the world of production. This time it's Anthony Davis of the Lakers. What's he up to?
He's formed his own production companies following the footsteps of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and more NBA former and current superstars. The production company is called Jackman, M3M, and they've already signed their first project and to co-finance and develop an animated movie, which could become a TV series, with the likes of Jennifer Hudson, Whoopi Goldberg, and will.i.am being the voice characters. Should be a lot of fun, and given Anthony, and by the way, Anthony has dabbled in a little bit of TV and movie production before, but this is the first time he's done a production company, and we'll see how it works. Again, everybody wants, in the NBA, the NFL, baseball, either while they're still having a career or not, they want to get into the TV game.
Yeah, definitely do. As do we. Streaming. Thanks, Simon, for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Craig. Take care. Enjoy.
All right. Simon Applebaum with us. Coming up next, it's time for some last licks, so stay with us. We'll wrap it up next.
He will be 2-7 against top 5 opponents in his 6 full seasons with the Buckeyes.
Now you're going to take on the road one of the best defenses in the country in Penn State. You're already having trouble rushing the ball. So what does that mean, Ben? That means Ohio State is going to have to rely on Will Howard to throw the ball on the road.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Are you okay with him moving to the head of the class at the Heisman with those 2 games? Because he wasn't even in the discussion before those 2 games.
This is a big opportunity for Dylan if he wants to continue to make his case for the Heisman Trophy, and I think he's shown that. You know, I mean, what is he, a 6th-tier player who's going to probably end up setting most of the passing marks because he's been around for so long? So why not also throw a Heisman Trophy in the mix?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got, 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great time for a lot of families tomorrow night. We've got Halloween coming up, and of course, everyone getting ready with their costumes and such. Also, an NBA player, apparently a very big Star Wars fan, and then we'll dive back, speaking of fans, into the Bronx from last night. It's time now for some last licks. Okay, so the Halloween costumes have begun. It's usually Halloween feels like a 72-hour event. Tuesday, Wednesday, a lot of people get dressed up. And then really tomorrow, obviously, is the day. And for one fan who was really cool, little girl gets dressed up like one of her favorite players, I'm going to guess, probably her favorite player, in the WNBA. And she posted this on social media yesterday. A young fan says, look at me, I'm dressed up like Angel Reese of the WNBA, one of the best players in the league, if not the very best. And Angel Reese responds and says how cute, really cool. So good to see the engagement there. And, you know, the one thing that I've never done, even as a kid or as an adult or even my kids, never gotten dressed up as an athlete for Halloween. I've always felt that's like a little weird. It's always been like a character of some kind. I think I went as Luigi or Mario one time. My son went as Luigi. I don't even. My daughter went as a princess. But as an athlete, no. Like I guess it's just really easy. You could put on a jersey of some kind. But for a kid, a completely different story here. So we got to give the kiddos a plus and an A+ for Angel Reese for responding to her on social media. I'm sure that made her day. Guess who else's day was made? Boy, well, this one was, speaking of out of left field, Victor Wembanyama. Probably top 5 player in the NBA even right now as a young player, was a huge Star Wars fan, is a huge Star Wars fan. How about this? Ended up meeting some of the characters from the Star Wars trilogy, including Hayden Christensen, who you see there. The original, the prequels were not really as well thought of as some of the other movies that came out later on. But maybe this is when Wemby grew up and saw these movies in particular, but had a chance, I guess, at practice, it looks like here. I'm not even sure. Was there a Comic-Con of some kind that they all got together and he was able to meet them? I'm not really sure. But Ewan McGregor, it's hard to see probably for you guys, but Ewan McGregor was also there as well. So really cool to see that he was into Star Wars. For me, I didn't think that those prequels were as bad as everybody thought they were. I actually enjoyed them, but I think the other movies, it's fair to say, were better than those that came back in the early 2000s. All right, finally, the controversy last night in the Bronx was really had when Mookie Betts was going out to right field and trying to field the ball in the stands. He ended up catching the ball. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, a foul ball. And then a fan grabbed his arm and tried to pull the baseball out of his arm yesterday. The guy's last name, I believe, is Capobianco, I think I saw online. Even did an interview with ESPN after this. Needless to say, this is going to be really interesting to see what happens with this. There's some reports that say that he's allowed to go back to the game tonight. I'm going to say that's not going to happen. That's going to be my guess, is between now and the time that the game starts. You know, I'm totally cool with, fans jumping over and listen, you pay for a ticket. You get to really do whatever you want beyond reason. But what would have happened if he snapped Mookie Betts' wrist or something like that? I don't even know what kind of conversation we would have today. So all fans within reason, do whatever you want. Always keep the baseballs, really cool. Grabbing a player's glove and taking the ball out while his hand is in the air, probably not the best idea or the best look. And also to make light of that, I think probably not the best look as well. But that being said, if it makes you happy to see crazy fans do crazy things at games, and so be it. Have at it. All right, that'll do it for the show today. Thanks again to all of you who are watching and streaming us, however you are doing so today. Thanks again to Mark Zinno for spending a few minutes with us talking some National Football League and some Major League Baseball as well. And of course, Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News joining us here on the show. Thanks to him, as well as Simon Applebaum from the podcast tomorrow will be televised. We're getting ready for the Breeders' Cup, so Daily Racing Form will be on this afternoon. We got Pharrell for an hour, and then Daily Racing Form for the big races coming up in California this week at the Breeders' Cup. So make sure you stay on the grid for that. In addition, thanks to our director, Luke. Thanks again to Frank. I hope you enjoy the rest of your programming and the rest of your day here on Wednesday, because you're going to be busy tomorrow night. It's going to be Halloween for all of you folks out there who get with your kids, getting ready to celebrate. If you're a kid, enjoy the baseball tonight. Could be a Yankees win. Could be the last game of the season tonight in Major League Baseball. So I'll be back with you tomorrow for our next edition of the show. 11 a.m. Eastern, we'll preview the game between the Texans and the Jets on Thursday Night Football. That is the game to preview. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again for watching the show. See you tomorrow.